studies in history for the next hour. We do this every Friday and Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, followed by our live stream lecture, which you guys can vote on here on YouTube, exclusively on YouTube, to determine what historical topic I will be lecturing on tomorrow at 4 p.m., as I do every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. As I pick a nice background, here's something, a nice age of exploration, some Spanish caracs, bringing explorers to the New World at the turn and beginning of the 16th century. This is supposed to be a painting of Magellan's circumnavigation of the world. So hello and welcome to the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel and to our Q&A live stream, where for the next hour I will be answering all of your questions about history and social studies. We have my wonderful moderators, Hars and Harry, holding down the chat and everything. And hopefully everybody's doing well and having a very good Saturday. We've got people who join us from all over the world, so it might be the beginning of Sunday where you're at, but thank you so much for joining us. Please follow our social media handles, such as our Instagram, Patreon, and Substack. You can read articles, you can get early access, you can get updates about the channel. Helping us out there is really, really big, so hopefully everybody's having a really, really great Saturday. And if you have questions or topics or comments about history that you want me to talk about, drop them in the chat. If you want me to go in-depth on a topic or talk about something current affairs, geopolitics, or regular politics and give an analysis of that, I'd be happy to do so. All you have to do is give us a super chat. If you want to become a member and get early access and extra videos and content, please consider becoming a Friendly Neighborhood Historian officially. And for a small monthly fee, you will get early access and special content and bonus features that you can only find here on the Friendly Neighborhood History channel if you become a member. So if you have any questions about history or social studies, drop them in the chat, and I will answer them as soon as I can. Take a water. I'm a little dehydrated. England just won the Women's Rugby Cup, so I'm feeling good. That's fantastic, Harry. Why is America's pastime baseball, not football? Baseball originated earlier. It's based off of a combination of English games. Rounders was the most common, but also cricket, which the British really, really loved to play. But baseball was played more often and more as an organized sport, and not just collegiately at an earlier time than football. And when you have it in the development of pastime and free time, with the development of the middle class in the midst of the Industrial Revolution, baseball became the organized professional sport everybody was playing. Football was popular at the collegiate level, and then of course eventually in the early 20th century morphed into the American Football League and later the National Football League. So that's why America's pastime is baseball. It's considered a very American sport. Very, very popular, and predates football, especially in the professional front. So, yep, that's why it's baseball, not football, is America's pastime. So, other questions, comments? Can you explain why the Shaolin monks have begun to modernize, not stand their ancient traditions and lifestyle when they could, because their temples and funding aren't protected by the government? Not sure. I don't know enough about them to actually comment on that. I'm not going to comment on something that I don't know enough about. So, again, hopefully everyone's having a really good Saturday or early Sunday, and a good weekend so far. And remember to vote here on YouTube for the topic you would like me to discuss in our live stream lecture tomorrow. Why football is called football when it's mostly played using hands? The kicking, the punting, the field goal, the kickoffs, since the game starts with a kickoff, that's why American football is called football, when soccer is obviously the real football, which uses feet far more often than American football. So, playing football in Europe is very different than playing football in America. So, is it true Congress debated doping in Major League Baseball more than the Iraq invasion? I think so. What did you think of Americans throw and catch the egg, also known as American football? It's fun. I like football a lot. I like American football a lot. Raghad, thank you for joining us from Syria. It's always great to have people from all over the world joining the Friendly Neighborhood History channel. Syria's got quite a fascinating and interesting history, kind of in the crossroads from the Near East and Palestine and the rest of the Middle East, a huge part of Mesopotamia. BGG, good to see you again. Can you please explain the history about Asperger? The disease, or the condition, I should say, Asperger's is considered an autistic condition that it usually has social ramifications more than anything else. It's considered a high-functioning form of autism. I don't know exactly who Asperger was, but yes. I'm not a scientist, so I can't speak more to what it means neurologically, but it has social effects and is seen as a example of someone who is high-functioning on the autism spectrum. So, Anyways, questions, comments, topics about history or social studies will get preeminence. Please drop them in the chat. I'll be happy to stop and talk about them. Why do all roads in Germany lead to Asphalt? I'm not sure. So let's see. And yes, join me on my voyage to the New World. This is Magellan's fleet, the first to circumnavigate the globe. Although Magellan himself would not do that, he died en route. Were the Moors a thing in America? Not really, no. The Moors were already kicked out of Spain, and to celebrate them being kicked out of Spain, Ferdinand and Isabella sent Columbus to the New World, which of course he thought he was going to India. What could you tell me about the history of Slavic nations? Quite a bit. What do you want to know? Obviously, I'm a Russian historian by trade, so I talk a lot about Slavs in that sense. But there are huge amounts of Slavs in the Balkans, southeastern Europe. They've been divided into various groups, such as with Yugoslavia, the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Many of them were under the thumb of the Ottoman Empire for an extremely long time. I'm trying to think of who exactly are Slavs, but they are a predominant group of Eastern Europeans. What's your thoughts about the recent UN voting about Palestine, Israel, and America? It's not surprising the way Israel has waged the war, particularly in the last year, with just kind of a tunnel vision and continual isolation from Europe. It's not surprising that they've kind of put the kibosh on them at the UN. I'm interested in to know more about Chernobyl. Chernobyl was a nuclear power plant that melted down in 1986, and it was seen as a huge failure of the infrastructure of the Soviet Union. It's in Ukraine. It killed many people. It contaminated the area around it. Nothing can grow in that area now. I believe it still is uninhabitable or unproductive. Yeah. Did you wear 100% cotton zip hoodies? No. Did you major in history? Yes, I did. What was Cesar's Bomba's original yield set for? Not sure. Jesus loves you. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Nick. Talk about the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Obviously, one of the most important and questionable historical events, if it isn't a historical event, is, of course, we know basically the history is pretty solid that Jesus of Nazareth did exist, that he was crucified by the Romans, and the Christian religion is obviously not based necessarily on those things, because those are all historical facts we can agree on. The crux of the Christian faith that makes it more of a faith-based religion rather than a fact-based religion necessarily is the resurrection, which is not the historical consensus. It's what his followers claimed that happened. What are your thoughts on Gorbachev? Obviously a reformer who, by reforming the Soviet Union, undermined its various authoritarian systems, which eventually led to its collapse. Did you see how the Israeli PM sort of glossed over the fact that he was giving a speech in front of an empty UN General Assembly because everybody walked out? Not surprised. Do you know about Roko's Basilic's info hazard? No. Thank you for joining us from New Zealand, Brooke. Trinity was born at Council of Nicaea by Roman pagan Constantine. Yeah, you don't have to yell your message, and that's not true. Christians believed in the Trinity before Constantine, and Constantine was not a pagan by that point. The history about Jesus is only mentioned in the Bible. There's certainly the history of Jesus as in his, the gospel narratives, which are historical biographies of Jesus, but also you have early writers talking about Jesus, Roman and Jewish writers like Josephus and Tacitus. The tomb was confirmed empty. Who confirmed that it was empty? So do you believe that Jesus was resurrected from the dead? I don't share my religious perspectives. To share my perspective on whether Jesus was risen from the dead or not, or whether Muhammad received the Quran from Allah, or whether Brahma created the universe would tip my hand religiously, and I'm not going to share my perspective. I have been thinking about changing my major to history, but I'm worried that I won't make much money after. There are many different ways to make money with history, Bruno. You can, of course, be a researcher. You can be a teacher. There are many different ways to do it. Tartaria probably was not real, not in the sense of a super advanced kingdom. There was the land of the Tartars in the Asian steppe in Central Eurasia, who were the longtime enemies of the Muscovites and the Russians. Do you think Unitarian Christianity is as old as Trinitarian Christianity? I don't know. Unitarian Christianity just seems to be a derivative of Judaism. How do we know that the year really is 2025? The entire basis for the year 2025, whether you use AD or CE, circulates around the birth of Jesus of Nazareth, which is obviously why it's a huge influence in how we determine the year in the Western world, even to this day, even if you're not using AD. So whatever questions do we have about history or social studies, I'll talk about religion only in the context of its history. Harry, this is the most important thing in the history of the world. I would say it is. It is one of the most important factors in world history. You can't have Western civilization, Western history, and everything else that we talk about with Western history without the development of Christianity. But it doesn't mean I'm going to share my religious perspectives. Do you have any thoughts on Reichert structure? I'm not sure if I spelled it correctly. It's in Africa. Don't know enough about it. After receiving your BA, what classes did you take that were not in the history department? I received my BA. I had a minor, and I took political science classes. Were Russians Ukrainian? Were Ukrainians Russian? This goes back and forth. The Kievan Rus were the first major Russian state, and they originated, or first major state in that area of the world, and they originated in what is now the Ukraine. Kiev was their major city. But there was various cities, Novgorod, Pskov, other territories. Go and watch my series on Russian history to learn more about it. Are you familiar with Romania? Do you think it's history? Not familiar with it, so I can't say. It doesn't sound like history to me. Yes. Nick, this is a history channel. I appreciate your fervor for your beliefs. Everyone is allowed to share their beliefs here at the Friendly Neighborhood History channel, but I'm trying to talk about history today. Do you study just the Russian Empire, or do you also study the stardom of Russia and Kievan Rus? I study all of it, Tanya. Go and watch my Russian history series, and you'll find out more. Any details on the toppling of Edward Kolstein's statue in Bristol? Don't know why that was toppled. Churchill said the winners write the history. Agree or disagree? Oftentimes winners do write the history, but I think that there's enough disparate sources and first-hand and primary accounts available to us now, especially in this digitalized age, that you can learn the history. The debates over history tend to be about the interpretation of history, what we call historiography, and not actually about the history itself. Why did Town George in Virginia not change its name after the war? Probably because George Washington. You can just honor him. People say Jesus is the Son of God. Then who's God? I'm not Christian. I don't really know. In Christian theology, you have God the Father, who is the creator of the universe. Then you have his Son, Jesus, who is the Messiah, the Christ. And then you have the Holy Spirit, which is given to the apostles after Jesus' resurrection. That's basic Christian theology. Do you have some geopolitical forecast for Cuba? Not sure. We'll see what happens. We'll see how far communism goes in Cuba. They've made a lot of concessions with their communism, as have other communist countries like Vietnam, in order to stay afloat. And now the Castros are long gone. Oh yes, I've heard about this. King Ram, one of the major Indian rulers, was like many ancient kings, had close connections with the divine, as almost any ancient mythology works. And how come Iran was appointed to be civil and human rights evangelist? Something that doesn't seem to fit them. I would agree with that. Do you study Babe Ruth? I study baseball. I study the history of baseball. I've talked about Babe Ruth on the channel, probably the greatest and most important baseball player in all of history. Even with not having as many accomplishments as Hank Aaron or Barry Bonds, or some of the others, not being the hitter necessarily that Joe DiMaggio was, still one of the greatest. His impact on the game, his impact on baseball becoming part of mainstream culture and part of the American way of life, definitely makes him probably the most important baseball player ever. What do you think of the answer to the question of what happened to the Roanoke colony? Speculation. I think the Roanoke colony was probably either killed by the natives. Powhatan said that he killed them, the Indian chief who was the father of Pocahontas. It's either that or they died off from starvation and disease. We'd be the next Charlie Kirk. I don't need that message deleted. I don't do politics here on the channel unless you want to. If you want me to analyze politics as a social scientist, do a super chat and I'd be happy to talk about a particular political issue. But I'm not a politician. I'm a historian. I talk about politics only in the historical context. What would you consider the most important and unique part of history you've ever read about? I look at Russian history and I see Russia as one big example of being a unique player. It's a liminal between Europe and Asia. It's kind of on its own wavelength, and it goes at its own. It marches to the beat of its own drum, and it's doing that now. That's why you have Putin and then his disparate, veiled, nuanced and nebulous nature compared to the West. He's very enigmatic because Russia is very enigmatic. Churchill said that Russia is in a mystery wrapped inside of enigma, or a paradox, or something like that. It's a mystery wrapped inside an enigma. What do you believe is the hardest historical period to study? The ancient world, because so much of it is speculative. What do you think about Emperor Nero's persecution of Christians? Nero's persecution of the Christians came because mainly the Christians, the Romans were okay with Jesus Christ being a god. They didn't mind adding another god to their large pantheon of gods. They worshipped the Greek gods, obviously, and reappropriated them with Roman names. They didn't mind the pagans in Europe worshipping pagan gods, as long as that didn't make them violent and rebellious. As long as people did what they did, obeyed them, the Romans were actually very religiously tolerant. The Egyptian gods. The Jews were allowed to worship the god Hashem, the god of the Old Testament. The problem with the Christians that the Romans had was that the Christians would not make concessions to Caesar being Lord, or and would not acknowledge Caesar as the ruler, as a god. So that was where the drift came from. What do you look for in a man? Usually the ability to successfully invade Russia. So, in other words, I don't look for men because no one's ever really successfully invaded Russia. What about the Cathars? Do you know about them? Are you talking about the people in France who were persecuted and killed in several different crusades in the 13th century? Do you think it will ever be possible for America to not exist within a two-party system? The duopoly? It looks more and more like the duopoly is just kind of the default, and the more Americans hate it, the less likely it is to go away. It's a History Channel armor. People are allowed to be Christians and share Christian perspectives, but it's not a overtly Christian channel. And here we have it, folks. A person who thinks he knows it all. A person, if you debated, would lose because in his mind he's always right and you're wrong. Yes, please explain to me how I've given off that vibe at all. Knowing a lot about something doesn't mean I'm right about everything. In fact, I've made several concessions today that I don't know everything. So your point is mute and your argument is bad. Have you learned about Russian art, specifically Russian animation, such as Cheburashka? I've heard a little bit about it, but I don't know a huge amount about it. But I have talked about Russian art and literature. I've read a lot of Russian literature. Russian music's obviously extremely important. You've got Tchaikovsky and the ballet. Have you learned about... thanks for joining us from Montana. What were the major findings of the church committee's investigations in the 1970s? Not sure. John, he has already answered that question. He said that he agrees with it in most cases. In total, how many people were killed in Roman games? Some thousands. I don't know the exact number. Keg Dog, what do you think of the suppression of the Byzantines' first 1,000 years of Europe? I don't think the Byzantines suppressed Europe for 1,000 years. I think they were doing their own thing, trying to be the big brother to the little brother of all these desperate European kingdoms founded by barbarians after the destruction of Rome. But yeah. Roman games were fun. We should bring back our culture. They weren't fun for those who participated in them. I'm here for just something to sleep. Lad's going to shout out. Give me a shout out. Well, sure. Like and subscribe, new man, and then go take your nap. Spanish Armada, destroyed by the English in 1588, really lost a couple of big battles, like the Battle of the Gravelines, and then became a victim of the elements, being totally decimated by the time they got back to Spain. Let me see here. What do you think about how much global politics is going to change in the upcoming 10 years in context of America? Do a super chat, and I'll talk more about that. Can you talk about Scotland's war with Norway? Is this the war over the Faroe Islands? Yes, I know a little bit about that. I mean, you have the Vikings who were constantly attacking Scotland and England before then, and some of the Vikings were Norwegian. You have the North Sea Empire, which was obviously a Norwegian-based empire that controlled England and parts of Scotland for a while. I'm thrilled to have received a generous shipment of 1,000 bottles of baby oil. Well, have fun with that, mathematics. Nobody cares. What about the Armenian Holocaust? What does the history books and finding tell us about? It seems pretty concrete that about 1.5 million to 2 million Armenians died, along with Greek and Chaldean peoples, Christians who were targeted as potential allies of the Russians, and so they were removed forcibly or killed. I'm generally good at shot back, love it. Your tone of voice gives off a know-it-all vibes. There's a difference between I think you don't know how tone works. There's someone who knows a lot and there's someone who knows it all. I know a lot. I'm generally good at resisting temptation unless it's something I really want. Like you, would you consider eating a viper fish on live? No. Any Irish-Russian connections? Yes. Well, not a huge amount. You have similarities between them in some ways, but not a huge amount of direct connections. What's the history of Chechnya and Dagestan in Russia? How did Islam enter this region? There have been the Turks, the Tartars, The Ottomans controlled many areas that the Russians would later take over, and so there was a large contingent of Muslims. When you have the largest nation on earth, and a lot of it is in Asia and Central Asia that was conquered by Mongols who turned to Islam, you're going to have a remnant that's a Muslim population. Um, um, Thoughts on the invention of the bullet musket ball? The Europeans perfecting gunpowder for militaristic purposes. Decimate means to reduce by 10%. We all know this. Thoughts on Greek fire. Really effective at protecting. The Byzantines created it, and it was a really effective way of defending your cities. But obviously, the Ottomans eventually perfected siege warfare, and that's how they were eventually able to get to Constantinople. Um, what was the Contra-Pro program, and who were its targets? Contra-Pro was run by I think the CIA's counter, or it was either the no, it was the FBI. It's a counterintelligence network that sought to infiltrate left-wing groups and push them towards radical violence and acts of terror so that they could be targeted and taken down by the FBI, and they could indict their members for being communists. And this was common in the late 60s and 70s during the upheaval of that era because of the Vietnam War and political and social and racial divisions. There was a rise of a lot of left-wing groups, and so the FBI sent in agitators to actually try to get these groups to commit acts of violence and terrorism. Stop embarrassing yourself on live. Stop preaching. We get it, all right? Okay. Smart, I like. Smart, I don't. Well played. Okay, then. Did Romans and Greeks smoke weed back in the day or sniff some snow? There was a little bit of that. Snuff was common in the Middle Ages and early modern Europe, or actually after the invention, the discovery of the New World by the Europeans. Many Europeans and later Americans loved snuff, which was snorting crushed tobacco. Half Scottish, half Turkic. That's funny. We ever going to see or contact aliens or not in our lifetime? Don't know. What happened to Nero? Nero took his own life after he was basically thrown out of power with a revolution that led to absolute chaos called the Year of the Four Emperors. Hello, Faraz. Good to see you. Do you know that demographers estimate that 10 million Russians have Scottish descent, and quite a lot of Scottish names that have been Russified? They were settled after changing to the Russian side. Interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if that's because of the connections between Nordic peoples who settled the area, the Varangians, who would eventually intermarry with the Slavs. They probably had some Scottish blood in them anyways, since they were Nordic and the Nords had already been landing and conquering Scotland and all of that stuff. Women of the past, these women now, who is more deluded? Neither. Putin in his time in the KGB. Putin was a KGB agent who probably really feels that the Soviet Union has said that the Soviet Union falling was the worst thing that happened in the 20th century, when you could call the Holocaust, the two world wars, or the Cold War itself the worst things that happened easily. Russian crown jewels were in Dublin. Didn't know that. I like your direct answers. I wish I could super chat. Hopefully someday keep going. Well, don't worry, Benj. Just like and subscribe. I appreciate you being here. Thoughts on ancient aliens theory? Personally, I think it's all made up. It's interesting. It's also fascinating when you consider that all the ancient civilizations basically had this idea that there were ancient people from the stars, gods, hybrids, demigods who visited them and helped them create their civilizations. The Greeks, the Egyptians, and the Mesopotamians all had it. The Mesopotamians called theirs the Anunnaki. Can you tell the story of what Nero done to the boy he wanted to be his wife? Didn't he kill him? Nero kicked his pregnant wife to death. Nero was pretty brutal. Boris Yeltsin was just drunk all the time. Probably not. Sometimes. If someone disagrees with you, would you accept it or get mad? I accept when people disagree with me. People disagree with me all the time on the channel. You need a break, brother. Well, give me a break by donating to the channel, and then I can afford a break. Is there a party going on in the background? I can hear someone talking. No. Why did Adolf go Antarctica? No, he didn't go to Antarctica. So, anyways, other questions about history and social studies. We're part 2 of our weekend Q&As. Ask me anything about history or social studies. Fridays and Saturdays, 6 p.m. Eastern. You can vote here on YouTube, exclusively on YouTube, for the topic you would like me to discuss for our live stream lecture tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern. What would have happened if the Bay of Pigs would have succeeded? If the U.S. had backed up, there probably would have been some conflict with the Soviet Union. You wouldn't have had the Cuban Missile Crisis, and there's probably a decent chance that the counter-revolutionaries would have been successful and the Castro regime would have fallen. So, what are your thoughts on being in Satan's little season? I don't know what you mean by that. Could you clarify, King James? So, anyways, other questions about history and social studies. Freeway, from what I have seen of history, there are many examples where if a communist government had failed to come to power or hold on to power, things probably would have been a lot better. be it in Vietnam, be it in China, and be it in Cuba. But on the counter of that, it would have been a lot better for the United States to have not worked to kill Mohammad Mossadegh in Iran, or to keep Noriega in power, or any of the other things where they would allow these fascist and militaristic dictators to just control their people and abuse them terribly in order to keep communism from going there. What do you think of Jimmy Carter's post-presidency? A great philanthropist who did a lot to help people. You need to get on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Final answer vibes. Yes, that's my final answer. I should be on that show. You said you are a free speech absolutist. Does this mean you are okay with blasphemy? Yes. I mean, so let me just categorize a couple of things here. When I say I'm a free speech absolutist, I think anyone should be allowed to say what they say. Should be allowed to say anything they want, as long as they are not threatening people or causing harm to children or danger to children or inciting violence or insurrection or things like that. However, that doesn't mean that I think it's okay. What I mean is that the government should not prevent people from saying things or tell people that there are things they have to say. At the same time, I believe in social stigma. So I believe that somebody who says something that is awful and horrendous we should point out this is awful and horrendous, and they should be, what's the word? Not cowed into silence, but there's definitely should be social stigma around and, demonization or at least condemnation. That's the better word of horrible things and bad ideas. And the best way to do that is to let those bad ideas be aired out in public and then say, that's awful, that's terrible, don't say that. And being punished by losing your job because you say something terrible is not your free speech being censored. Your free speech being censored is when the government says you can't say these things no matter what it does to you. Social stigma is part of how we live in any civilization, where people look at speech that is evil, harmful, or hateful and say there's got to be ramifications for this, either in a job environment or something like that. A free speech platform like social media is a little bit different. So yes, I think people should be allowed to say blasphemous things. I don't know if that means they should keep their jobs. I don't think the government should punish them or curtail what they are allowed to say, therefore curtailing what we're all allowed to say. I don't think the law should be brought into it, is what I am saying. How do you not know the story of what Nero done? What do you mean? This is good. I'm glad you like it. And Eric, I really appreciate the super chat. It's always great to have you here. What is the modern banana republic? A banana republic is a government that is basically run by a series of oligarchs and kleptocrats who hold on to power. It's typically referred to in the context of Central and South American countries because they export bananas, basically where they are run by just a few of the top bananas, basically. Strange how the Russian people that were alive during the USSR missed those times when it didn't work out in China and Vietnam. Some of them do and some of them don't. Putin is of a younger generation that was on the upper echelons of government. He thought that it was a mess up because he was benefiting from it. I remember being in Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan in 2010, seeing old USSR stuff downtown. Some of the people I spoke to missed the USSR in which the Americans would leave. It's weird. People have nostalgia in all the weirdest ways. There is no golden age in history. History is just an ongoing story of various different times, and nostalgia can be an extremely huge player in our biases and lenses in which we view history. The U.S. only killed the Iranian prime minister because the British government was getting all antsy and they wanted to nationalize oil, which is considered a major national security threat. True. Are you from the United States? Yes. Do you know that demographers estimate the 10 million Russians of Scottish ancestry Scottish have been settling in Russia and mercenaries? Thank you for telling me that. I'm glad you like ostriches. I think we should bring back ostracism, but you need a 2/3 majority referendum, but it should take place every 3 months instead of once a year. Yes, I just don't think the government should have anything to do with it. Because if they're going to ostracize someone for one form of free speech and they can use all sorts of things, whether taxes, fines, or imprisonment to do that, I don't want to be imprisoned for something that I say. I probably deserve to lose my job, but not be thrown in jail for years because of what I say. What do you think of SOs? Obviously horrible people. Think of it then. We could get rid of Boris Johnson, Prince Andrew, Prince Henry, Harry, Meghan, loads of them. See, in many ways, the British society has already gotten rid of them. Well, no, but you talked about Dr. Mossadegh. I believe moderate leftism would make communism less likely to take off. Also believe he truly loved his country. True. I also believe Middle East would be better if the coup never happened. I am also very proud of the fact that my late grandfather worked for Dr. Mossadegh. No, he was a good reformer, no doubt about it. But he shouldn't have been taken out, and the Shah shouldn't have been taken out. What if a government employee says something terrible, and who defines terrible? That's completely within, since the government employee works for the government, then that government department is responsible for dealing with that. Just like if I work for Starbucks and I say something terrible, Starbucks management is responsible for taking care of that. When was the last time America was great? I don't know. I'm tired of hearing that. Thanks for the truth and real history about Israel. BGG, it's my pleasure. I want to talk about the truth and real history of all peoples, the Palestinians, the Israelis, the Americans, the Jews, and the Gentiles. The Redcoats are coming. Again, hello, Emir. Good to see you. What role did U.S. intelligence play in supporting anti-Soviet mujahideen in Afghanistan in the 1980s? In many ways, the United States helped create a series of different freedom fighters who resisted the Soviet Union in that area, including, of course, Osama bin Laden. Let me see here. I'll throw you in jail for the way you look, boy. Yes. Yes, you can't compete with how handsome I am, so you'd rather just have me in jail where no one can see me. Hello, Timothy, and no name. Good to see you. Can you tell us about Eleanor of Aquitaine? Probably the longest game ever played. Just a fascinating woman. Leaves her husband, the King of France, because she can't have children with him. The very hyper spiritual. I think it was Louis the Ninth. And then goes with the King of England and has several children with him, and then uses them to thwart his power and basically ruin the second half of Henry II's reign, and eventually gets her favorite, Richard, to become the king. And yes, rest in peace, Charlie Kirk. Let me see. No, I think you should get deported and not be allowed to come back with all of your writing, art, and internet, social media presence wiped if you are ostracized under my plan. And I think that there should be a petition system to nominate someone for ostracism. Then we have a referendum to pick the 3 people you will vote from. Hello, Angel. And then if one of these 3 people receives 2/3 majority, they will be ostracized. So basically, communism. Basically, deport anyone who we did. That creates a witch hunt. That could be on the one end, that could be what the communists did in the Grand Purges, and it could be tantamount to what happened with HUAC and McCarthyism. I agree. I'm saying Dr. Mossadegh had every right to do what he did. I'm also saying that what he did was not a national security threat, and his reforms would likely communists less likely. Yes, there is a case in which reforms such as unionization prevented communism and anarchy from rising. So I would agree with that about Mossadegh. Why haven't we deciphered the scripts of the Indus Valley civilization? The language has been very much lost to time. Sanskrit has not, but that language, in many ways, has been lost. Hello, Signature. What do you think of King Longshanks of England? I think, probably the best English king. I know it's a hot take, but the best English king. Not the best English queen, monarch. The best English monarch was their queen, Elizabeth, but definitely he's up there. Hope you're having a wonderful weekend. Amir, I hope you are, too. It's so great to have you here, as always. I really appreciate it. This fool trying real hard to be the next Charlie Kirk. No, Charlie Kirk didn't really talk about history. B, I don't talk about politics. And C, I don't share my political views. This guy's insufferable. Yes, Trivial. Thank you for taking the time to come to the live stream, listen to the live stream, comment, and then say that. You clearly didn't think I was that insufferable to last this long. No, it's not because there's no government. There would be a purely public thing. Plus, I mean, it's only 4 people a year. It's totally unnecessary and ridiculous. You're just trying to exert power, and that could become a witch hunt very, very easily and get out of control because humans can get out of control extremely easily. Just read Thomas Hobbes. Didn't you write your PhD paper on the Great Game? Can you talk about that some more? My master's thesis is about the Great Game, which I think is the first Cold War, Russia and Great Britain's competition over Afghanistan and Iran. Is Lebensraum a good thing? No. And by the way, the Germans didn't invent Lebensraum. It's a German word, but the Russians were the first ones to have this concept of gaining more land to have buffer zones to defend themselves from invaders, and they had invented it after the Mongols invaded them. I don't know, Mike. Oh, come on. Who are we going to deport? So innocent. Think you could get Donald Trump? We could get Prince Andrew. Okay. Whatever. I wish I could contribute more to this informative and genuine channel about history. Refreshing to have a channel who deal with the truth in the era of TikTok and social media lies and bended history. I mean, I use all of those. I use TikTok. Go follow me on TikTok. There's stuff on TikTok you won't find that I have there, and vice versa. But yeah. Lesbania? What are you referring to? The island of Lesbos, where the original lesbians are said to be from, where the Greek word for women who have attraction to other women comes from? How would it turn into a witch hunt? You would have a public thing 4 times a year to get rid of hated people. Yes, who's hated and who determines who's hated, and anyone can be nominated. That can become a witch hunt very quickly. Why doesn't Ukraine cede territory to Russia? Don't write your questions in the form of a yell. If you want me to go more in depth on that, Whitler, please leave a super chat. So let's return to the free speech thing. You think is it bad to enjoy the black metal music but have a lot of lyrics that are blasphemous? That's subjective. I don't think the music should be banned. The public determines who's hated. And the public never has ever made a bad decision. The public that's a popularity contest, but in reverse. And that can become a witch hunt extremely easy. You're not paying me for an opinion, then you're not going to get my opinion. They say Vikings, etc., are the great sailors to explore and couldn't find the Pacific. That's true. They couldn't find the Pacific, but they could find Canada hundreds of years before the French and English did. Okay, so I've been going long a lot in the last couple of weeks. 60 minutes is usually the minimum, but I've been going 70, 80, 90 minutes. So I'm going to wrap up in about 5 or 10 minutes or so. I think I've earned the ability to to end a little bit on the earlier side if I need to. I've got a couple of things that I need to do. So, what were the symbolic meanings behind the clans of white robes, hoods, and burning crosses? So, just letting you know, we probably got another 10 minutes or so here. So, the clans' white robes, it was just a way to disguise them, but it was also it had been something that had been done before. It was seen as a sacrilege and a desecration, and it was obviously meant for terrorism. Terrorists always love to cover themselves. Well, I enjoy black metal, but some people tell me you should not listen to it because it's blasphemous, but I answer them that I am not religious, and of you don't like it if you don't have to. Yeah, that's very fair. Can you talk about the Portuguese colonial wars in Africa post-World War II, Mozambique, World War III, Angola, Guyana-Bissau, and how they ended up embroiled in the affairs of Rhodesian and South African bush wars? The Portuguese were a lot less willing to decolonize compared to the French or the British, and that led to some problems. Was the KK originally just an excuse to go have a few beers and talk crap? No, it was a terrorist group. Harry, don't you know Friendly's history's hot sister? Of course my sister would be hot. She's related to me. So, anyways, thank you for enjoying my video about the Gunpowder Empires. Thank you for watching. Watch all of my long-form content that we have releasing every Monday and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern, and we also have shorts every day where all the plants are from in the world because of climate. Yeah, sure. Did you find similarities in what is going on now in Europe against Jews similar to the history of Europe against Jews? It's not surprising there's anti-Semitism in Europe, but it's not exactly the same thing. It's lashing out at Israel, but the scapegoating of the Jews is the similarity, where Jews are being blamed for the actions of the Israeli government when those Jews don't even live in Israel, let alone are responsible for its government. Could Donald Hillary could get Andrew and Harry and Meghan? Okay, Harry, stop trying to be a totalitarian for one day. I know you're a national socialist, but now's not the time. After high school, what history classes did you take outside the history department? I'm not going to go into more detail. If you want to know more about what specific classes I took, give a super chat. What's your favorite Michael Jackson song? Probably Way You Make Me Feel, something more romantic. No, I'm not justifying the KKK. Okay, Beat It's a good song. You're just getting to know Benny's hot sister? Yes. Benny's hot sister and Stacy's mom. We're keeping it all in the family. Anyways, other questions. I've got a couple more minutes. I'm going to call it early because I always go way late for all of you guys, and it's a lot of fun, but it always leaves me exhausted, so I'm going to call it while I'm fresh today. Okay, can you talk about the War of 1816? Which War of 1816 are you referring to? And make sure to vote here on YouTube for our live stream lecture video. What was the Black Panther Society? Wakanda? It was based on the comic books where there's basically this theory it's based on this theory that ancient Africans had incredible kingdoms and societies that were actually extraordinarily successful. What was the Battle of San Sebastian in Spain in the Napoleonic Wars? Part of what's called the Peninsular Wars, where basically Napoleon tried to keep his brother Joseph in charge of Spain and Portugal, and through a basic guerrilla revolution, Joseph was overthrown. Is the picture in the back the Battle of Armada? No, it's Magellan's cruise around the world. Oh, the Black Panther Party. That was a black supremacist group founded in the late 1960s. I think it was Stokely Carmichael and I'm trying to remember the name of the other fellow who started it, but basically bent on militant activity in order to improve the lots of African Americans and community activism. What's your thoughts on Muhammad Yunus? Don't know enough about him. War of 1812. Oh, the British curb stomped the Americans while also fighting the French, and then the Americans, and then the British got tired of fighting, and it led to a stalemate. So, are you still on track to dress up as Woodrow Wilson? No, we'll probably vote for it. So, anyways, I'm gonna plug in my phone because I'm at 1% here. So my lights are going to have to go the way of the dodo bird. But anyways, let's see here. Other questions about history, social studies. I've got a couple more minutes. And like I said, I'm ending early today because, well, I can. because I go late every day, and for once, it's nice to end on time. Technically, we were supposed to start at 3. I was a little late, so I'm going to go a couple minutes over 4 just to get some questions answered. Have you seen American History X? I think you'd like it. I'll have to check it out. Thank you, Cody. 45 World Army 2. I don't know what you mean. The War of 1812, this guy doesn't know about. Thank you, Hars. That's good. That's good. Okay, and that's taken care of. Come on, you've got to dress up as Woodrow Wilson, as our God Woodrow Wilson. Yeah, hilarious. Bangladesh Chief Advisor Dr. Muhammad Yunus. Oh yeah, is he currently there? The pyramids are not graves. Not fully. They are kind of. But anyways, let's see. I'll answer a few more questions. Where was your best history vacation? Tombstone, Arizona. That was fun. What part of shall not be infringed is so hard to understand? All of it. Can you talk about the role natives played in the colonial wars in North America, because they are often seen as being carried along by the winds of change and almost irrelevant sometimes? Yeah, the Native Americans were very active in warfare before, during, and after the arrival of the Europeans, in various forms that involved taking land, losing land, fighting for land, all sorts of forms of that. Can you tell me about the painting Nighthawks? I love that painting. Edward Hopper's painting of a cafe scene. I think in 1940, 1941. Really cool realism. Do you think we will see more modern civilization? I don't know what you mean by that. Life expectancy in America 2 generations ago was 45 years old. It wasn't that low. It was in like the late 50s, early 60s, and the 1930s. I remember a wrestling movie called The Tombstone. Fair enough. He hasn't got me back for some reason. Yo, do you read Bible passages? As a historian, I've read Bible passages. The Bible is a primary source from the ancient world. Let me see here. Bible passage and hobby. Okay, that's cool. The Enlightenment started in protest to countries, and it took a long time to get to France and other Catholic countries, and the fact says many things. Sure. Yep. Out loud on a stream? Oh. No. I mean, if somebody makes a quote and puts it in the chat, I'll usually read it, but do you have a favorite historical artifact? Good question. I'd love to get my hands on George Washington's teeth to find out if it's actually made of slave bone or not. Yep. Have a good night, and Harry, thank you for joining us. Ownership is theft. You've got some interesting ideas, Henry. But yeah, all right. I'm gonna sign off too, since both one of my moderators got timed out for being a bad boy and hitting on Benny's sister, and the other one decided to fall asleep because he's in England. So, who's your favorite artist, philosopher, and poet? Philosopher, Plato. Poet, Milton, or Kerouac, and artist, Van Gogh. If you could resurrect a president talk to, who would you choose? Either Lincoln or Reagan. I mean, do you think after the current civilization collapse, we will see the next civilization or end of the world? No. I think civilization is going to go on. It's just going to change the form it works in. Do you know about Rumi? Do you know the Rumi? A little bit. What's the best Sprite flavor? Original. So, anyways, well, I'm going to, and thank you, Cherish, for Chanya for giving the membership to Cherish. Okay. I'm going to sign off now. Any last questions about history, social studies, and the like? Make sure to like and subscribe on your way out. I will see you all tomorrow for the live stream lecture. We're going to end a little bit earlier than we normally do, but we might have some time after the live stream lecture tomorrow to do some more Q&A. Ooh, last question. What's your opinion on the Mughals? Fascinating empire, one of the most successful empires in all of Indian history. Basically created the modern land of India and was the first real Indian superpower to control all of the subcontinent. So, I have heard that about George Washington. So yeah. All right. I hope everybody has a great rest of their evening. And yes, as always, take care and love history. See you tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern live stream lecture. Have a great night. Bye-bye now.